If you just look at dating advice books, there are so many. It's a very crowded field, but they all pretend that you don't have kids.
They do.
And yet we know that right now about half of American children are growing up in some scenario other than mom, dad, and the kids. So we know that there are a lot of reconstituted or blended families out there. And there's almost nothing, even based on opinion, for those families. And so when I was single parenting, I really wanted a resource that would not only help me date, but help me date based on facts, based on science instead of opinion. And there was nothing at all for just ordinary people, but there was especially nothing even in the opinion base for those of us who are single parents. So I had to learn a lot of this on my own. You know, we tend to incorporate that. And even if you never hear anything like that, probably most of us have this kind of ongoing tape of negative self-talk. And so the first step to enhancing your self-esteem is what cognitive behavioral psychologists call notice and redirect. Notice when you're having a thought that if somebody said this about your child, you would be really pissed off.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't take it if
So
somebody
much.
said it about somebody else you loved. If you're saying those kinds of things to yourself, notice gently, without judgment, but notice. And then compare that with reality. You need to pat yourself on the back for your journey, people. Notice and redirect. Redirect to align with reality. The reality is you walked through the fire and you came through. Dr. Hetherington's study showed that there was only one thing that successfully reintegrated men and women post-divorce that helped them feel whole, healthy, and happy again. Can you guess what it was?
No idea.
Most people will come up with anything but what it actually was. It was getting into another relationship. But the part where people say, and you have to get all your ducks in a row before you can be in another happy relationship,
Yes.
it's just not so.
That's so great.
Patently untrue. And we know this from a 20-year longitudinal study.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. And if you're a single mother who's doing it all, you're raising your kids single-handedly, you're financially supporting the entire family, and you're just wishing that somebody could support you once in a while, then this episode is for you. Now, people who aren't single parents have a lot of dating advice for single parents. They say things like, you should put yourself out there more. You should make use of a babysitter more. You should take risks and open your heart and trust people again. But they have no idea how hard those things are. I mean, your kids come first. They take up about half your time, and then work takes up the second half of your time because someone's got to earn a living and those household chores don't get done by themselves. So it feels impossible, but it's not. And that's what today's guest, Dr. Duana Welch, wants you to know. Dr. Welch is known for using social science to solve real-life relationship problems. Her work has appeared in Psychology Today, Time Redbook, and the Huffington Post. A single parent herself, she went on her own journey to find Mr. Right. And the result was a happy marriage and her first book, Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps from I Wish to I Do. Welcome, Duana.
Hi, thank you for having me on again, Amy.
So people who watch our show know that you were on before. You were talking about how high our standards should be in love. But this time we're talking about your second book, which is out today, and it's called Love Factually for Single Parents and Those Dating Them. Now, why did you decide you needed to write a second book?
I decided to write a second book because I only write books that I needed. And I really needed this book. It's funny, if you just look at dating advice books, there are so many. It's a very crowded field, but they all pretend that you don't have kids.
They do.
And yet we know that right now about half of American children are growing up in some scenario other than mom, dad, and the kids. So we know that there are a lot of reconstituted or blended families out there. And there's almost nothing, even based on opinion, for those families. And so when I was single parenting, I really wanted a resource that would not only help me date, but help me date based on facts, based on science instead of opinion. And there was nothing at all for just ordinary people, but there was especially nothing even in the opinion base for those of us who are single parents. So I had to learn a lot of this on my own.
So tell us a little bit about that. So in this book, you go very, very personal into some of your story and about your first marriage. Could you share just a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, that was really hard. That's actually why it took me so long to write this book. In the first book, I don't reveal any of that. I mean, I say I've got an ex-husband, but I don't really reveal my story. It took me a while to get brave. So I have a child who was born with type 1 diabetes, and I have an ex-husband who I adored. I was madly in love with. And he was a super sweet, super smart guy, just brilliant and kind and cute, and everybody loved him. And unfortunately, he had a terrible problem with addictions, which he was not able to overcome. And I did not realize that he was struggling with that before we had a child. But after we had a child, he just couldn't keep it together anymore. It's like the stress of being a provider and a protector was so great that he couldn't hold it together. And then when it turned out our baby had a very serious and chronic life-threatening condition, my ex wanted to give the baby insulin. And if you give somebody too much insulin, it can kill them. And this is when I realized, like, this isn't about whether you love this guy or whether you can wait it out for him to get sober. This is about whether your child's going to survive. And so I left, and I didn't just leave him. I actually pretended that I was taking a vacation to see my family, and I never went back. So we were living in California, where I was on the full-time faculty at Cal State Fullerton. And I left him behind and went to see my family, and I wound up living with them until I had established residence and I could successfully divorce him without being recalled to California. And so that's what I did. I left my job where I was being told I would get tenure, and I left my community of friends. I left the first house I'd ever bought. And of course, I left the person who I thought was the love of my life. It was awful.
And this is where I think that a lot of dating advice fails single parents, because they assume that what you're leaving behind are just some breakups, some relationships that didn't work out. But what you're actually leaving behind in so many of these cases is the ruins of everything you build up, of all your hopes and dreams. And now you're starting out with nothing. And often that really has a major impact on your self-esteem. Not only the fact that you've seen the disaster, but also the fact that your child still loves you. You've got the love of your child, but romantic love, do you even deserve romantic love? Should romantic love be part of your life? Should you just focus on your kids? How can single parents sort through that mess of feelings and make that decision that maybe they are worthy of romantic love and maybe it will work out?
Boy, that's a really insightful question, Amy, because most of us don't just feel that we can't trust men anymore. We really feel that we can't trust ourselves.
Yes.
If I chose this person, I'm the one who did it. Nobody made me. People would say, you have a PhD in psychology. How'd you choose that guy? That felt great.
Oh.
I overheard family members saying that, I was really pretty smart, except when it came to men, where I was a complete failure. That's fun to hear from your intimates. So, we tend to incorporate that. And even if you never hear anything like that, probably most of us have this kind of ongoing tape of negative self-talk. And so the first step to enhancing your self-esteem is what cognitive behavioral psychologists call notice and redirect. Notice when you're having a thought that if somebody said this about your child, you would be really pissed off. Yes. Like you wouldn't take it if somebody said it about somebody else you loved. If you're saying those kinds of things to yourself, notice gently, without judgment, but notice. And then compare that with reality. So in my case, I might have said to myself, yeah, I made a pretty big mistake. I chose someone who had severe addiction issues. He was a lovely, lovely person. It doesn't mean that he wasn't also a child of God. He's a good, good person with a bad, bad problem. But love is not necessarily enough. And I did the right thing, and frankly, in many ways, the heroic thing, by giving up everything to save our child and start a new life where I had no prospects of another career, had no idea what I was going to do. You need to pat yourself on the back for your journey, people. Notice and redirect. Redirect to align with reality. The reality is you walked through the fire and you came through. Some of you may still be walking through it. This seems like a distant memory to me now, but at the time I felt suicidal some of the time. That's kind of a normal response to losing almost everything. It's a death. You're grieving. the death of a lot of your dreams and that relationship and your united family. So be gentle with yourself, notice and redirect. And then the second thing, and this is going to be so counterintuitive. So Mavis Hetherington, isn't that a great name? Mavis. Dr. Hetherington did a 20-year study of the same people while they were going through their divorce and then for 20 years afterward. And any new spouses or partners and all the kids, stepkids, all the kids, huge undertaking. This is called the Virginia Longitudinal Study. And Dr. Hetherington's study showed that there was only one thing that successfully reintegrated men and women post-divorce that helped them feel whole, healthy, and happy again. Can you guess what it was?
No idea.
Most people will come up with anything but what it actually was. It was getting into another relationship.
Really?
Yes. All the stuff you get told about self-care, it's all good advice. But the part where people say, and you have to get all your ducks in a row before you can be in another happy relationship,
Yes.
it's just not so.
That's so great.
Patently untrue. And we know this from a 20-year longitudinal study. Dr. Hetherington doesn't pull any punches. She says, look, the one thing you can do that I know for sure will help you is get in another relationship. Not just any relationship, a good one, but get in another relationship. Stop waiting to be happy first. People get in relationships and then they get happy. It's not the case that they get happy and then they get in relationships.
And I love that because that goes so against what a lot of popular dating advice tells you. They say that you need to be the person you want to attract. So if you're a mess or if your life is chaos, then you can't hope to attract anyone whose life isn't a mess and isn't chaos. And I love the fact that you're saying actually no, because if you fall in love, you realize, wow, good things do come to me, even if I don't deserve them. It's grace. I love that idea of grace.
Yes, it's grace. And also think of all the stuff you do now as a single parent, which is everything.
Yeah.
You do everything. I also was in the situation of basically doing everything. I did choose to live near my parents where I could get a lot of help, but still, it was on me and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Now imagine that there's someone who loves you, who takes a lot of that load off. Even if your self-esteem doesn't improve by virtue of being loved, it will improve because you now don't feel the weight of the world all by yourself, alone, on you.
And that really tells us a lot about why a lot of people they feel guilty about dating again because they think, well, this is selfish. This is for me, right? And if I go out on dates, I'm taking time away from my kids and my kids don't see enough of me as it is. And they feel guilty because it's about their needs and their wants and it's not about their kids. But what you're saying actually is when we make the effort, and yeah, there's that growing pains to find that relationship, but once we're in it, we're actually doing the best thing for our kids because now mommy's supported. Now mommy's happy. Now there's someone else to play with, and it's actually the best thing for everyone.
If you get a good partner, and of course my book really walks you through step by step how to make sure that that's what happens. If you get a good partner, which I've done, I've been happily married for this January, it's 11 years. So, I was a single parent really looking for about 4 years. And a lot of that was painful, but now almost 3 times that long, I've been very happy.
That's fantastic. So talk to us about dating with children. One of the biggest issues is, of course, time, because there's never enough time. And, the only really place you can get dating time is maybe if you don't sleep, you stay up late, checking your phone for those online dating. Do you have any strategies for dating? I love how you have B, C, and AC. They're before children and after children.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball of wax after children because you can't do anything spontaneous anymore, it seems like. Yeah. Everything's got to be planned, which actually serves you well in courtship, to tell you the truth, because men value whom and what they work to have, and they're going to have to work to have you because hopefully you're not going to involve your kids right away. So some of the tips that I know for sure help is don't involve your kids right away. Second, make use of online dating options because you can pursue those at 1 a.m. when you get up to do something for your kids and you're in your PJs and your hair is a mess and they can't see you, they don't know. Also make use of the lunch date, make use of the 1 hour date, and occasionally just have the kids in extended care for the whole day and just go on a date every hour on the hour. Have people
No
meet you at a
way.
restaurant. I did that. One guy figured it out. It was so funny.
How did he
One
figure it
guy
out?
ever figured it out. And he called me that night. This is before people were texting so much, because this was my husband and I married in 2008. So this was before the iPhone. People were doing T9. It took a long time to text. So he called me that night and he said he was really upset with me because he figured out that I had seen at least one other person that day. And I said, I'm sorry, you probably didn't feel very special. And he goes, no, I didn't. And I said, here's the thing. I'm a single mom and I'm looking for the most important person in my and my child's life. And that's a serious undertaking. I have very little time to take away from my child. And that first meeting, it's basically an interview. And I understand if you don't want to go on another interview, but this is the way I got to do it, guy. And he asked me out again right away. He totally got it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So they do get it.
Well, and if they don't, bye to you.
Yeah.
You have the, look, if not good enough worked for you, you'd still be with your ex.
That's
I'm
so
telling you, your ex relationship, your ex marriage, your ex father of your child, this can be a real catalyst to getting it better the next time around, because if not good enough was good enough for you, you'd still be there.
yeah. So let's talk about remarriage quickly. So there's a lot of good things about remarriage, right? Because suddenly there's financial stability that there wasn't before because there's someone else aside from just you. Your kids have another father figure, which can be important if their dad isn't in the picture. But you say something startling in your book. You say that 3/4 of couples that have children from previous marriages end up getting divorced. And I mean, that's not why we're in it to date. We're in it to date for finally giving our kids what they didn't have before. Is the risk of remarrying worth it?
So I will start by saying that my child, Routine, who's now 17 and was 7, just turned 7 when Vic and I married. My child doesn't always appreciate Vic. And my 8th chapter of my book is called There Is No Such Thing as a Blended Family. So if you're hoping for another father figure, you're probably not going to get that. What you are going to get is to be a mom on your terms, where you get to spend way more time with your kids, and you get to be a much bigger influence in their lives if you want to be, and you get to have the kind of relationship with them that you want to have. And your kids may not see that until years and years later, that they got the gift of you because you weren't working every living minute and you weren't stressed on those few moments that you weren't working. They may not see that, but having research is really clear. Most kids don't get another father figure. That's not how the cookie crumbles for most families. So I would give up that part of the dream. And I think that part of the dream is what leads to divorce in a lot of cases, that women are looking for this guy to step in and be a real dad. Ladies, that's not normally what happens. What normally happens is you get to be a real mom now. You're real moms anyway, but I mean, you get to be like the best version of yourself, the version of yourself where you are free from so many burdens and worries that you really can enjoy. I know so many single moms who are just white knuckling it through parenting. They're trying to enjoy it. It's real hard. I remember it's real hard to do. So you get to do that. And you get to have somebody who's on your side, who lifts that burden from your shoulders, who will listen to your problems and who will care. That's a wonderful, wonderful gift. And so is it worth it? Absolutely. Look, I think the reason that 75% statistic exists is largely because people have incorrect ideas going into that second or third marriage, whatever number marriage it is. They don't understand that blended families exist on the Brady Bunch, and that's it. My whole 8th chapter, the rest, a lot of my book talks about preparing yourself for finding this person, knowing that you found this person. Like, how do you find them? Specifically, what do you do to find them? And then, unlike my first book, it talks about what happens next. What does it look like once you have them? What do you need to do? What do you need to be thinking? And one of the big ideas is there are a lot of competing agendas here. Look, before kids, it was just you and them, and maybe their extended family cared, but maybe they didn't. And you got to just be romantic and spontaneous and do whatever you wanted. And then you made this family together. Well, you didn't make this family with this other person, and you never had a time with this other person where you didn't have a family. And not only each of you come into this marriage with ideas of how it's going to be, but your kids come into this marriage with ideas of how it's going to be. The grandparents are invested. The ex-spouses are invested, sometimes not for your best. So you've got a lot of competing agendas, and that means you've got an entourage, and that means you've got complexity, and that means there's just more stuff to work out. I'm a big fan of acknowledging the challenges and being happy anyway. I've been very happily married for 11 years, and I plan to be very happily married for the rest of our mutual lifetimes, and that's possible. Science is about putting the odds on your side, and that's why I wrote this book. It puts the odds firmly on your side. The odds that Vic and I would have wound up divorced were actually closer to 95% when you consider every variable. But there's one variable that those stats never account for, and that is, do you understand the facts and do you know how to leverage those to your advantage? I did, we have, it works.
Fantastic. Now, for those of you watching, you want your own copy. Like I said, it's out today. Love Factually for single parents and those dating them. You can get it at yourbrilliance.org/Duana. That's yourbrilliance.org/DUANA. And Duana, do you want to tell us about what extra special gifts they can get if they go to your website now?
Absolutely. As you'll see in the book, but also here, I have taken the time this time to create a workbook. And instead of charging you money for the workbook that accompanies the actual book, it's beautifully done by the same designer who did the entire physical book and the ebook as well, Aaron Tyler. And you can get it for free at lovefactually.co. So you can get that workbook. You can also check out a free first chapter of this book and my first one. See if you like it. If you like the first chapter, you're going to like the whole thing.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're coming to an end. Do you have any last message you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Yes. It can seem really hopeless. The messages out there that you get from people are really conflicting. And the experience that you are likely to have dating will put you in touch, by definition, with a lot of people who aren't the right one. By definition, very few people are going to meet your bar, and nor should they. That's no reason to give up. Keep the big picture in mind. Keep the big picture in mind of you happily united with someone who really deserves you and your family in a life of mutual support, trust, love, and just laughter. Keep that vision in mind and go for it. There is really no time like the present.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you out there for watching. We hope to see you again soon. Until then, let your brilliance shine.